My name is Ben Straley. I'm one of 16 retirement plan advisors who work for the company Empower, and Empower has the state of Tennessee 401k 457 plan. But because of that partnership between Empower and the state, I'm the only financial advisor trained and authorized to talk to you about your TCRS pension. Okay? So what is Retire Ready Tennessee? Well, Retire Ready, TN, is the state's retirement program that combines TCRS, which is your defined benefit plan, a pension, 401k 457, and retire readiness education. Okay? So what is TCRS? TCRS is a defined benefit plan that provides a lifetime benefit, period, based on a formula. Now, the second word in TCRS is the most important word, which is what? Consolidated. You could leave the city of Hendersonville, go work for Sumner County, go work for the city of Gallatin, White House, Portland, doesn't matter, state. If they're a TCRS employer, your time keeps accumulating, okay? TCRS by the numbers. It's the third best state pension in the country. When I started with Empower about 6 years ago, it was number 6. The trust fund, which is managed by Treasury in downtown Nashville, so they didn't farm it out to an East or West Coast financial firm. They're managing the money in-house. $66 billion. When I started 6 years ago, it was at 42. Okay? Active members in the legacy plan, which you all are in, 159,000. Active members in the hybrid plan. That's that newer plan, right? And that is for other employers of people who were hired after 2014, 61,000. And then retired members is what? 148,000. TCRS paid $2.9 billion in benefits. But what I want you to see is where it says state legacy, hybrid, teacher, political subdivision. See the percentile funded? All of it is 90% or higher. What does that mean? The pension won't go broke. That's simple. Okay? Who are members of the plan? The question should be, who isn't, right? State employees, higher ed, teachers, judges, members, you all fall into what? Local government, okay? So what is the TCRS legacy plan? First off, anybody in this room less than 5 years working here, okay? If you're not 5 years vested, do you have a pension? No. Now, if you came from someplace else that did have TCRS, again, remember, the magic is 5 years or 60 months, okay? That is to be vested. And once you are vested, your pension can never go away, period, okay? Service retirement. This is what I was talking with a couple of the gentlemen up here. 30 years of service or age 60, whatever happens first. So could you be in your mid-50s and have 30 years in? You bet. You could darn near be in what? Your late 40s, right? Let's say you started right out of high school working for Parks and Recs, right? And if you work full-time, I mean, you could be under 50 and have your 30 years in. Really? Sure. Okay? Now, what determines TCRS? And there's that legacy fact sheet that I got there, and it's this right here. In the gray box on the right side, guess what that is? That is your formula, okay? Now, I was talking to someone earlier saying, well, I just want to know what the formula is, so I'm going to figure it out. Don't do that. Call TCRS and get a benefit estimate. Why? They're the folks. I mean, no problem you trying to figure it out, but remember, If you figure it out based on that formula, that's for your life only. Remember, the benefit of TCRS is not only could it pay for your life, but who? A survivor. Well, how do we know what that's going to be? I don't know. The only one who can calculate that is Treasury. And that is why I got this form for you. It's the checklist brochure. So here's that 800 number again. And what's the first bullet point? If you're within 3 years of retiring or being retirement eligible, call and get a benefit estimate. When you call them, they'll say, what's your retirement date? You tell them. Then tell them the name and date of birth of the beneficiary. Then it'll take 60 to 90 days for you to get it, and it'll show the payout amounts, okay? But remember, folks, it is an estimate, not a guarantee, right? If you work longer than the estimate, right, your retirement date, guess what? Your pension will be higher. If you leave earlier, guess what? It'll be lower. It's just that simple, okay? Here's the formula. Years of service times your average highest consecutive 5-year salary times 1.5%. That's the formula for your life only. That does not include survivor. Because remember, let's say you choose a survivor option and it's your spouse. And let's say your spouse is 5 years younger than you. Your amount is going to be lower than what that amount is. Why? Because that amount is just for you. The amount with your spouse is going to be lower because now Treasury is not only going to pay for your life, but also your spouse. See what I mean? Okay. Monthly benefits over the member's lifetime. And again, there's also survivorship option. So here's just a quick example. If your high 5 average was $30,000 and you had 5 years of service in, your monthly benefit would be about $197 a month. If you have 30 years in, it's about $1,200. Now, just think of your pay. If your pay is higher, and I hope and pray everybody in here, it is higher than 30, guess what? Your pension will be higher than that. It's just that simple, okay? Now, some gentlemen were asking me questions earlier about the different things that you can do with TCRS. Remember, service retirement is just a fancy word for unreduced. There is no haircut. So it's either age 60 or 30 years of service, period, okay? Early retirement is age 55, invested. One reduction factor will be applied. You could have 25-year early service. So that's where you have 25 years in, but you're under the age of 55. There's a double reduction factor. So it is a big haircut. So some of the examples I have had is, let's say somebody was 53 and they were thinking of leaving. And they thought that if they left, they had to turn it on. No, you don't. Just because you leave it alone. Then at age 55, if you want to turn it on, go ahead. But now it's just one reduction factor. Or, as I was talking with someone else, they left Hendersonville and they went to work for a non-TCRS employer. Then in their case, guess what? Wait until age 60 and turn it on, and now it's unreduced. You get it all. The higher you get to age 60, the lower the reduction is. It's not as big a haircut, okay? Additional types of benefits, disability and death benefits. And on every piece of marketing information that you grabbed off the table, this is the one and only number that you need. 800-922-7772. And when you call that number, it'll go through a long welcome. And then at every prompt, just say one word, representative. And I promise after about 3 to 4 times, you'll give it a live body on the phone. I promise, okay? When you do, say, hey, I got a question about TCRS, or I want a benefit estimate, or, hey, I'm trying to sign in to make sure of who my beneficiary is, okay? And I can't get in, or I forgot my password, right? It's been a day. Call that 800 number and those folks can help you out, okay? Also, TCRS has a cost of living adjustment, and the range is anywhere from 1 to 3%, okay? And every year, Treasury decides whether they're going to give you all a pay increase or not in your pension, okay? Now, remember I said that formula, right? Years of service times AFC times 1.575%. That is the member-only benefit. So what does that mean? That pays you until the day you die. Now, because the city of Hendersonville is non-contributory, what does that mean? That means that you haven't contributed one dime to your pension. And guess what? You're not supposed to. But everybody else around you, they got to contribute 5%. Really? Yeah. So in their case, there is a bucket of money in their pension. In your case, there's not. So what does that mean? If you choose the member-only payout and you die, your pension dies with you. Your spouse gets nothing. Why? Because you wanted the highest amount. And it breaks my heart when I go to schools and I see widowed women working. Why? Because their spouse chose the member-only option, thought he was bulletproof and was going to live forever, and guess what? He got sick and died. Left the wife with nothing. And because she stayed home and took care of the family, she doesn't have a big Social Security. I see it all too often. And over 60% of folks who retire, this is the option they choose. It's frightening to me as a financial advisor.
So there's more people that take the single than the actual...
Absolutely.
Really?
You choose that at retirement?
Right.
At retirement, like we don't choose it now.
No. All you do now is what? Log into your account and make sure the beneficiary, if you have a spouse, it's her. Why? Because death and divorce happen every single day. And guess what? If you have an ex-spouse on your TCRS, I can guarantee your new spouse isn't getting it. Now, your ex-spouse, I'm not going to go down that road, but your new spouse isn't getting it. So the busiest day to retire is the end of June. Why? Because to get that cost of living adjustment, you have to be retired for 1 whole year. But do you get longevity? My guess is your longevity may be more than that 1 to 3%. So with that being the case, if it's me financially, I'm getting my longevity. I don't care about the cost of living adjustment, because what are you giving up? 2 years. That's it. So 2 years at 1 to 3%, that's the range, may or may not be, as much as that longevity that you're getting. But I don't know that. So here are the 4 survivor options. Now, folks, none of these are done today. This is when you submit your application. All you do today, and promise me, you're going to log in to TCRS and make sure who your beneficiary is. Because it would break my heart if I find out you didn't do that, and then you died and you didn't have the beneficiary on the account. Right now is when you retire, you submit your application. At that time, you would select one of these options. So I'm going to use myself as an example. So this amount here, let's say, is $1,000 a month, just to make the math simple for me, okay? If I choose option 1, my wife's about 1 year older than me, okay? That option 1 payout would, let's say, be $900 a month, okay? When I die, my wife would get $900, okay? Option 2, or let's say it's $800. Option 2 would pay me $900 a month, but if I die, my wife would get 50% of that, or $450, okay? That's option 1 and option 2. Those are permanent. What does that mean? That means if my wife dies before I do, it stays as is for me. So, option 3 works this way. Let's say that payout amount would be $800 for my life. If I die, my wife would get the same $800. However, if my wife were to die before I do, then my $800 would pop up to the member-only payout, or the $1,000 a month. Really? You bet. Well, wait a minute. Can I put a different beneficiary on? No. The horse has left the barn, right? You submitted your application, Treasury calculated your pension, that's it. That's it, okay? Option 4 would pay me a little more. I die, my wife gets 50%. She dies before me. Again, it pops up to this amount here. Now, only that benefit estimate I was talking about earlier has these 4 survivor payout options. This is why I cannot stress it enough. Call and get the benefit estimate. Well, I don't know for sure. Great. Give them a couple different dates. They'll run a couple of them for you. Well, I may retire in March, or I may retire at the end of the year. Okay? Treasury will only run one benefit estimate in a 12-month period. Why? It's not going to grow by thousands of dollars in a year. It'll grow by dollars, okay? But if you wanted to say, okay, well, what if it was just my wife as a beneficiary, okay? Or what if I wanted my wife and my kids? Could you do that as well? Sure, but you have to remember, the more people you list as the beneficiary, the lower amount you're going to get paid. Why? Because Treasury is obligated to pay everybody else. So the more people are sharing the pie, the less you're going to get. Does that make sense? Okay. So, where do you go? You go to this website right here, www.retirereadytn.gov. It's in the brochure. And you click on Log in to TCRS Self-Service. Then it takes you directly to the TCRS website. And then, if you remember, you got a user ID and password. If this doesn't look familiar, stop what you're doing and call that 800 number. They will help you out, okay? Now, why do I say stop? Because if you try and guess what it is, you'll eventually lock yourself out, and it takes longer to unlock you and then get you set back up. So I would just assume you stop, give those folks a call, and then they're able to walk you through. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, also, before I go any further, we're also going to talk about the 401k. This is still, you go to the retirereadytn.gov website, click on that box for 401k 457. That is how you enroll in the 401k if you want to do that. Now, what's the minimum per paycheck? $10. That's it. Okay? Now, selecting a beneficiary, I cannot stress this enough. See where it says monthly benefits cannot get paid to estates. By default, when you're hired, the state puts an estate of your name as the beneficiary. Why? Because they got to put something in there, okay? But then you have to go in and list the person, because if you don't, nobody's getting it. Now, who's responsible? You. Okay? And this is why I'm here. It's like, folks, this is really important, so you really need to be engaged, okay? Now, accessing your account online, again, same website, click on TCRS Self-Service. You're able to pull up your annual statement, update beneficiaries, do whatever you want to do. When you make a change to your contribution on the 401k online, that's part one. Part two, keep an eye on your paycheck. Why? That's where the rubber meets the road, right? Meaning, just because you increase it from 10 bucks to 100, right? Don't just assume it's going to go without a hitch. Keep an eye on your paycheck. And it should take no more than 3 paychecks, and it should show up. If it does not, contact your payroll department, okay? Now, we talked about TCRS. Yes, sir. Yeah.
You may have answered this, I'm not sure. Let's say somebody retired 10 years ago, and they picked the first one and took it all themselves.
Yep.
If they're still alive, can they change it?
No. Horses left the barn. Done. It's a pension. Yep. You cannot change it. Except one thing, okay, is you would have to come back to work and work for 3 years full time and then retire. Okay? Now, Social Security, so we already talked about one part of your income, right? TCRS. Here's the other one, Social Security. Well, if TCRS is paying, 45 to 47% of your pension, depending on how many years of service you have, right? Social Security is at 40%. That could be what, 15 plus percent of a gap, right, in your income. Where's that money coming from? This is why we're talking about your 401k and additional retirement accounts. So save enough for retirement. Many financial advisors say 70% of your pay. Well, let's look at the typical cost. New American home, $330,000. Estimated costs in 2039, $595. Do you think homes are worth more now? Yes. Look at the bottom one. New vehicle, $32,000 back in 2019. Estimated costs of $58,000. Guys, what's it cost for a brand new pickup now? A lot more than that, isn't it? Like what, 70 plus? It's crazy. And it's half a vehicle, right? Like it's got a bed in it. Anyway, it's just crazy. Although I will say pickups now are a heck of a lot different than back in the day, right? Like, boy, they got a better ride than a lot of cars out there. All right. So, deferred compensation, 401k. This is why I'm here. The city thinks enough about you to have me here talking about the 401k, which is an additional way of you putting away money for your retirement. Now, how many here are already doing the 457? Okay? You can do both. Really? Yes. They're two separate plans. The IRS says you can contribute to the 457 and you can do the 401k. Now, 401k, how much can you contribute? $23,000. For those in the room under age 50. Those over 50, add another $7,500 or $30,500. Now, the benefit of the 401k are a couple. Number one, you can borrow from the 401k. Really? You bet. Back when COVID happened, I probably had about 8 to 10 people call me, and the first thing they said is, hey, Ben, no offense, I'm working on the honey-do list, and we're going to, finally get that kitchen remodel done. So I need to take some money out of my 401k. And I said, well, now, wait a minute. How much are you looking at? And they told me. So we got in touch with Empower, and they ran a scenario. They were able to borrow from their 401k. They got the check, did the kitchen remodel, paid themselves back with interest, non-taxable event. Really? You bet. You bet. Okay? Also with the 401k, you can make Roth contributions. It's not a Roth IRA. It's Roth contributions into the 401k. Well, what's the difference? Before tax contribution help you today for your taxes, right? If your salary is $50,000 and you contribute $5,000 a year in the 401k, what gets reported to Uncle Sam? You made $45,000. See, you got the tax benefit up front. But the downside is what? When you take that money out, you bet, you got to pay taxes on everything. With the Roth, same scenario. Your gross is 50, you contribute 5,000 into the 401k. What gets reported to Uncle Sam? You made 50. So you don't get the tax benefit today. That's the bad news. Guess what the great news is? It's all free when you take it out. All of it. Well, people say, well, yeah, Ben, but when I retire, my taxes are going to be lower. Okay, I'll play along. Do you know what your taxes are going to be 5 years from now? No. But I know free is free, right? Okay. Roth contribution, we already covered that. There's 3 different ways that you can invest inside of your 401k. So for those at the bottom, do-it-yourselfers. Pick the funds, do whatever you want to do. How often can you change the investments? As often as you want. Right? Do I suggest any more than a month at a time? No. And just remember, dollar cost averaging, right? Every paycheck, if the market goes up and down and all around, that is your friend. Why? Because if the market's lower, you're buying more shares of that investment, right? Right. Then you get the benefit of appreciation when the market comes back around. That's one. Help me do it, that's the top. That's where you answer some questions online and they would put together a customized portfolio based upon your information. But it's a one-time manage. It's a one-time allocation. Or the middle, help you do it. We do it for you. You can hire Empower and we charge you less than 0.5% for the year to manage your money. Now, whose money is it eventually? It's yours, right? So if you want to make some changes, you set up another meeting with me or call the 800 number, and we're there for you to make the changes. At the end of the day, it's still your money. But a lot of times folks are busy and you're specialized in your area, right? I don't know what you all do. So again, we kind of stay within our own swim lane. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, if you do it yourself, chances are it may be in one of these target date funds. What do they use? Your date of birth. And it says, when are you going to be age 65? That's how these target date funds are chosen. It's just that simple. So of all the different financial questions they can ask you, they don't ask you one. They just see what your date of birth is. Okay? Here are the individual investment options, from very conservative to very aggressive and everything in between. Okay? My Total Retirement Program, this is where we manage your account. And the quarterly fee is 0.1125% up to $100,000 balance. Then for the next 150, that annual fee is even lower. So the higher your balance, the lower we're going to charge you. It's just the right way of doing business. Rollovers and transfers, Empower has a dedicated department. That's all they do, is help you with that. So if you have an old IRA, an old 401k, that maybe you want to jumpstart the 401k here, simple. We've got the 401k already started. You set up a meeting with me. All I would need to see is the most current annual statement, and we start the process. Okay? It's just that simple. Now, this number right here, again, 800-922-7772. They're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. So what does that mean? Folks, you don't have to call them during business hours. Write your questions down or whatever's on your heart. Come home, lock yourself in the room, call them up. get your questions answered, right? As opposed to, hey, I'm driving from one location to another and, a thought comes into my head. That's not the time to call, honest to goodness, okay? And the reason why I say that, because you want to make sure, right, that the information that you get is accurate. Now, if you're like me sometimes, and you could ask my wife and children, every once in a while something triggers it and it goes off. In that case, write it down or do something. Or do it on your phone and say, okay, call TCRS and ask them this. I'm telling you, folks, because this is really important. All kidding aside, okay? Now, Retire Readiness Review, that's where you set up a one-on-one meeting with me or any of the other reps, okay? We can do it virtually, where I can share my screen with you, or can do it over the phone. Or if I'm here and you are able to lock in a time with me when I'm here, we can meet face to face. Not a problem. Okay? Now, if you leave TCRS, so is anybody here under 5 years within TCRS? Okay. Remember, if you leave and you go down the road and work for a non-TCRS employer, okay, you have 7 years to come on back. Not to Hendersonville, but just TCRS in general. If you do not, your time is lost. So if you were to come back 7 years and a month, you would start off at 0. When you're within 3 years of retirement, now this is important, you need to call and get that benefit estimate. We already talked about that, okay? When you're ready to retire, what do? You go to the TCRS website and log into self-service. That's where you go, okay? Now, online application. So again, this is another screen, but it's a little more user-friendly. After logging in, bullet point number 2, the member will access the online application from the Services drop-down menu, okay? Now, when you do this, lock yourself in a room. Why? Because when you start completing the application, you want to go from beginning to end. You do not want it to time out on you, because nothing but bad happens. Trust me. So once you start it, don't stop until you submit it, period. But what you also need to have is what? Bank information and your driver's license, okay? And tax withholding. But the bank information is the most important. Well, what should I put in my savings or checking? If it's me, do your checking account. Why? Because you got your checkbook right in front of you, right? You give them the ABA number and your account number. Well, what if I wanted to go to my savings? Then go to your nice banker and say, hey, my pension's going to be coming in, and then I want you to move it from checking over to savings. They'll do that for you. But it's cleaner and easier to have your pension go into your checking account, okay? Once you submit it, it'll stay submitted. And then what happens? Then it goes to the city of Hendersonville. They certify your time. They also add in what? Sick pay, right? 20 days of sick pay equals 1 extra month of service time, okay? Then it'll say in process. Then what'll happen is you'll get a letter in the mail. Now that letter is the most important letter you'll ever get, because that letter will tell you what the projected payout amount is, number 1. It'll also reconfirm your bank information, okay? Then it'll also talk about what? The tax withholding. You have 60 days, 6-0, from the date of that letter, that if something doesn't look right, you need to notify TCRS as soon as possible. Because on the 61st day, the horse has left the barn. Your pension is moving. Now, if there's something wrong and you didn't notify them, now you got to try and catch that wild filly, right? And it's taken a little while. That's why when you get that letter, make sure everything is accurate. Now, I was meeting at fire before I came here, and so one of the firemen said, well, wait a minute, what if, because you submit your application 90 days before your retirement date, what if my wife dies during that time frame, right? So that changes things up. Then notify TCRS, let them know what happened, and then you would just go in and change the beneficiary payout. Or instead of a survivor payout, maybe it's just your life only. But can you do that? Sure, you can. But the point here, folks, is you got to let them know. Because if you don't let them know, the wheels, although they're turning slow, like they're moving, okay? So, return to work, you can come back. So let's say at age 60, yes, sir?
That 90 days prior to retirement date, is that a hard?
No. Now, do you submit it 6 months out? No. I would say something between 6 months and 90 days, okay? It used to be, because before, I think it was about 4 years ago, before what they had, when it was a paper application, there were folks sending the paper app in a year in advance, right? Well, what can happen in a year? Life, right? So then you got one department in Treasury working over on this old paper app, and now life happened, and now you got to submit another one. This is why they've kind of condensed that time to the 90 days. Now, I can also say, and I get emails darn near every day, especially right now, I got teachers saying, yeah, I'm leaving in May, and it's not next May, it's like next month. What do I need to do? Well, number one, you and I should have visited a while ago, okay? But that's in the past. Now you need to submit your application, because in their case, they want to make sure they get paid as soon as possible. Well, see, in that case, they can't even get a benefit estimate done. Why? Because that's going to add additional time. So this is why, folks, the sooner you can get in front and get some information, the better off you'll be, period. Period. Okay? And if things change, go ahead. Now, remember I talked about that survivor payout. I had this happen once where husband and wife came into my office. This is before COVID, down at our Nashville office. And there was a little bit of tension in the air, if you know what I mean. So he said what he wanted to say and what his payout was going to be, and then he got up and left. And the wife looked, you know, a little embarrassed. And I said, I don't mean to pry, but is everything okay? And she said, well, we're working it out. And I said, okay, because she was going to choose a survivor payout option. I said, and if you get divorced, the only way that you can get him off of it is you got to come back to work for 3 years and retire. Wait for it. 6 months later, I get a frantic voicemail saying, Ben, this is Betty. I need to talk to you as soon as possible. And I knew. So I called Betty, and she said, yeah, that, won't even going to say what she said, okay? She goes, I want him off. And I said, you remember what I said? She said, yep, I'm going back to work. My old boss is taking me back. I'm starting Monday. She just retired about 2 years ago. That's it. Okay. Remember, 120-day contract, right? Typically, you got to wait 60 days, but if you're indispensable, like we all are in this room, and your boss wants you back right now, they could waive it. Meaning, you could retire, right? Take your full pension, come back and work part-time up to 120 days or 960 hours. Well, okay, how would that work? Well, I had a gentleman who was the maintenance man at a school. And Bob been at that school probably, the school was old, but he knew every nook and cranny. Okay, you know the type. Well, his wife was after him to retire for probably the last 4 or 5 years. He finally retires. Then it got awful cold and they couldn't get the boiler to work. So they didn't know what to do, so they called Bob. Bob went in and in probably less than an hour had her up and running. Why? Because he knew, right? Because when you know, you just know. Well, then it was just like a comfortable pair of shoes, right? Bob was just there, visiting with the boys, working and all that, and so his boss was like, hey, let's go ahead and hire you back. So they did. But guess who else knew Bob was working back at the school? Treasury. So here he was getting his pension check, and Treasury was sending him his check, right? Well, that went on until the gravy train stopped. And then Bob had to pay back the overpay of the pension. And then they sent him a letter saying, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want your pension or do you want to go back and work full time? So Bob and his wife visited with me and I said, hey Bob, when do you normally have the most problems at the school? And he goes, in the winter, right? Or, you know, extreme weather. I go, just have them hire you as a consultant, right? Just have them keep you on the payroll. Then, when they need you, they can call you. If you stay under the 120, you get your full pension, the wife is happy, and guess what? Every once in a while, when you've had enough of the home life, go back and be around the fellas, right? Everybody's happy. Everybody's happy, okay? So, all plans are needed to be retire ready. Again, my name is Ben Straley. That is my email address. So, if anybody wants to set up a one-on-one virtual meeting with me, email me, okay? I know you filled in the sign-in sheet, but what I can say is, my guess, some of you probably have about as good a handwriting as I do, and a lot of times I can't make heads or tails of that sheet. So email me, I'll reply to you, okay, with my contact information. You click on the link and schedule a one-on-one virtual meeting with me. And like I said, you could be in the vehicle and we can visit over your lunch hour. Yes, sir.
Real quick, if I died, hadn't signed up for anything yet.
Yep.
I died today.
Your wife,
Get 100%.
so I'm talking about your pension. Your wife would get the option 1 payout. Because it's 100% of nothing. You haven't contributed anything in there. Now, if you got a 457 or a 401k or an IRA, right, you got her listed as a beneficiary, that's a bucket of money. She'd get that money, but you got to remember your pension isn't a bucket of money.
But she gets the pension
She would get the option 1 payout.
the rest of her life.
Rest of her life.
Because I picked her as a beneficiary.
Because you have her as the beneficiary. Now, a lot of times, folks want to argue with me, and they're like, well, my trust, and I spent thousands of dollars. Your trust means nothing. It means nothing to TCRS. You've got to put a live body on, period. Period. Can't make it any more simpler than that. Yes, sir.
I'm single with less than 3 years. Do I still need a one-on-one with you? Or it is what it is?
It's up to you. You can set up a meeting with me if you want. Have you gotten a benefit estimate?
Just online. It's not projected, but I've been online. to see.
Right, so that's your annual statement.
Right.
Right. But again, remember that annual statement is a year ago.
Right.
Right. If you want to know what it's going to be a year from now, call for a benefit estimate.
Okay.
Then that benefit estimate, if you're saying, hey, it's just for my life only, yeah, not a problem. Okay?
One more.
Okay.
If you retire in June, you retirement date's June 15th, and you've got 6 months of sick time.
right?
That just adds to your years of service. It doesn't
Years of
move-
service.
It doesn't move your retirement date.
No, only if you're looking at what? Being sick, right? And using your sick time and have you get paid for it. See what I mean? Well, again, if you've got 6 months of sick time, and let's say you want to take sick leave and get your full-time pay, just like you were sick, when would your retirement date be? It's the day after your last paid date. Okay? Now, again, we're not splitting atoms here, so if the dates don't match up, it's not a big deal. Meaning, in your case, if you chose March, but you're going to write out some of that sick time to maybe May, if it's me, I would use May as the retirement date. But if you want to say March, that's not going to cause a problem. Okay? Okay. Any more questions? Well, thank you all.